Hello everyone, I hope you're all well. It is Sunday the 16th of June and welcome to Sniper Sundays. I hope you've all had a good weekend as always, and anybody who's celebrating Father's Day today, as it's Father's Day in the UK, I hope you're all having a good day. So I'm going to jump into the charts, start looking over, have a little review of last week, and let's see what's happening for the week ahead. So Euro USD, so as explained last week, last Sunday we're up at this area here. We were just following the non-farm payroll, and you can see this trend line here. I explained that with this big push up on Friday, this bullish candlestick here, what this is trying to do is bring buyers into the market who are most retail traders who see that we've broken the trend line here and they think, okay, broken the trend line, time to place a long trade. We're going to go to 1.15 or whatever the destination may be. But as I explained, with that manipulation on the Friday, I could see that this was in fact manipulation, and there was an opportunity to take a short around these areas because we were in fact going to turn around and push back down, because the overall trend on this is actually still bearish, as you can see. But this is a lower high, lower low, just created a new lower high, and overall we're still bearish on Euro USD. So here was a really good chance to take a short trade, and should we push down, there's a very high possibility that we could come down and break these lows here and create a new lower low to continue this downtrend. So for instance, if we were in a channel that you often see with downtrends, and if we just put that on here, for instance, there is an opportunity that this could come down, price could come down all the way and maybe hit something like that down at these sort of levels down here. So that was what I was looking at, which is a possibility. But as I've explained before, I never get married to a trade. I never think, oh, now that just because we're in 130 pips in profit, that it's definitely going to come down and make new lows. The market can change at any time. So upon the market open, I will be looking at how price acts around this weekly support level of 1.1200. Just adjust that slightly, because we could always find support here. So never get carried away. Never think, all right, I'm in a great trade, this is going to go and keep going, keep going. That's why we take 50% profit at 100 pips or wherever my first target is, and we move our stop loss to break even, because there's nothing to say that the market couldn't open and find support along this level. I'm not saying it will. I will be looking out for it just in case. But see here, the support, previous support here. There's nothing to say that that's not a possibility. Just because we're looking very, very bearish now with this bearish day here, anything can happen in the market. That's why we take some profit out, and we move risk free, and then we let the trade do its thing. So something I'll explain to you next week, if it occurs, is hedge trading, which is a bit more complex and a bit more advanced. And if the opportunity happens to take a hedge trade, then I'll do a tutorial video to explain. But what basically hedge trading is buying down here, even though we have a sell trade, and placing a buy trade as well. But I'll go into that into more detail when it's actually necessary. So looking into the week ahead, as I said, we're looking very, very bearish at the moment. But I'm going to be looking at how the market opens over the weekend. At the moment, fundamentals can change this market quite quickly. So I'm going to be looking at what happens around here. This figure is quite an important level of support at 1.1200. So let's see what happens there. Overall, the US dollar is looking, it has been gaining strength. So if I just go to the dollar index, which I've showed you a few times, you can see here the dollar index has actually come down to my monthly key level of support at 96.50, and we tapped that last week, and then over the last week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we came here last Sunday on that non-farm payroll, pushed down, came into a monthly key level of support, which also showed me that we were coming into a level of support and also US dollar was coming into a level of resistance. So there was a good chance of finding some support there and also finding some resistance here. So dollar index, we can see we pushed up, and on Friday, this is the daily chart. You can see on Friday we had that really big, strong bullish candle, really helping the US dollar. So let's just have a look here. So you can see here we're finding some. If I just put this across, let me just bring this down. Actually, you can see here there's an area of resistance support that we're running into. So we might slow down slightly on market open. You can see here support broken through, coming back and acting as resistance. So we need to see whether the US dollar can actually push on and continue further next week, whether we can actually push up and create new highs, or whether we're actually going to fail around here and push down to the lows. So that's going to be very, very important when we're looking at a lot of US dollar crosses. So Euro USD, as I said, you can see here, we're coming into an important level of support with this region here. And given that the US dollar is coming into an important level of resistance, these levels are going to be quite key at the start of the week to keep an eye on and just see how the pairs react around those levels. So hold the short trade with the profit taken, and let's see if this can continue lower. Regardless of this pair coming lower, I would expect, see we've had that nice 130 pip fall, you would expect it to come back up for a retracement before coming back down to the downside. So what we may be looking at is possibly a hedge trade from around these areas to take a long trade to come up maybe 50 to 100 pips. And even if it doesn't just come 100 to 50 to 100 pips and we actually go higher, we've actually got a long trade from down here as well. So that's what hedge trades help you to do, to cover yourself from all angles. So I'm going to be looking at order situations on market open. At the moment, I am still bearish. My bias is still bearish, but I'm just giving you the whole picture of the possibilities that could happen next week. But as I said, talking about hedge trades and so on, I'll explain more about that as and when the time is ready. So Euro GBP, testing our patience still after a long time. If we just look at this neutrally in the market, if we weren't in this trade, you can see we're struggling around the 0.8900. We've had a tweezer top here, doji candle. So you can really see that prices slow down here, and the market's really in indecision. Doesn't know whether it's going to go up or down. So at the moment, we're just ranging around this area. Pretty difficult to trade, as our entry has been around this level here. Even though we get stopped out and we just keep re-entering and getting 20-30 pips at a time. I'm keeping an eye on this. My bias is still short on this. I'm expecting this to come down to the downside, as I do feel that regardless, we need that bit of a bigger retracement, whether it just be a retracement or a reversal from this level. I do feel that after this big run on Euro GBP, you can see here since May, we come a long way since May, with 200, 400 pips, and now we're finally slowing that down, and we look like we may pull back, and we can pull back to 0.8800. So that's what I'm sort of looking out for in this pair. 4-hour chart, you can see it's quite choppy, but we are starting to fall from here now. So my bias is still short on this, still holding my short trade from this level up here, and yeah, we'll see what the market does on open. You can see a sort of triangle formation sort of forming here as well. So it's really just in a bit of a range. You can break below this counter trend line, then we should see the bears start to gather some momentum and push down to the downside. Euro AUD is something that I was looking at last week, which many of us were. On Friday, I wasn't looking at getting into trades too quickly, seeing as the market was coming to a close, and we had done very well on some other trades. But you can see here that sort of head and shoulders formation on the daily chart, which looks really good. We've had two really bearish days in a row now. So we had two shooting stars here. So it does look like price is going to push down lower. But what you can often find in these areas here, we've had two bearish days, is that we might just consolidate here for a little bit longer. Now on Friday, we had obviously, I explained here originally earlier in the week that I wasn't looking at selling around these areas. I expected one more push to the upside. And on the 4-hour chart, we had that double top. Then we had that really nice 4-hour bearish engulfing. So this is a nice sign to take a short trade. But because it was Friday, I could see that there could be some manipulation in the market, especially watching gold and so on, jumping around. And we can see here we had that little push up higher, and then we came and tried to push back down lower once again. Now I am keeping a close eye on this, and I will update on short trades on this. But I do feel that we may have just another push up to the upside, possibly up to that around these areas. But I am keeping an eye on this pair to possibly look at coming up to sort of creating another resistance around this level, maybe this blue level here, sort of this head and shoulders formation, or coming back up to the top of this range once again. So I am keeping a close eye on this, and I will be watching. But yeah, I do favour shorts on this coming up soon. But it's just whether the time is right. I want to see what the market opens like as well. So we've got a really nice double top at the moment on the 4-hour chart. So let's see how the market opens, and I will update as and when I see something that is more probable and has more of a chance for us with it falling. I don't want to jump in too early and get us stuck. GBP USD, really bearish day on Friday, mainly because, again, just like Euro USD, it was because of not mainly because of the pound, the weakness on the pound. It was mainly because of the strength on the dollar now, or the US dollar. Now, looking at this on the daily chart, and we'll go to the weekly. Just look at this on the weekly. You can see we are coming down, back down, closer and closer to that 1.2500 level. Now, on the weekly, we've had a bearish engulfing, so it does look like we're going to push back down even lower. But what I am watching for is just to see how we react around this level, this support level here, where we reverse around quite sharply from. And I'll also be watching how we act around this sort of daily trend line here. So we may come down a little bit lower. We may come down to around this level here, sort of tap that daily trend line, and we could possibly find some support from there. Now, if we don't, then we're definitely going to push down and come lower to that 1.2500. We're only about 89 pips away from it at the moment, but I am watching this sort of region here to see how price acts. So this is what I'm watching on the market open. But we do have, let me just have a look at the calendar for next week, which is quite important. So on Monday we have the ECB President Draghi speaking once again on the euro. Similar to like what we had last week when I posted that link where you could see the press conference. So that might make a move on the markets. Tuesday we have Australian news once again, and Draghi speaks again. So there could be quite a bit of movement on the euro this week. So trades like Euro GBP we need to be careful on, and obviously Euro USD, but we're very safe on that trade, being 130 pips away from entry. Then we have Carney speaks again from the Bank of England, which will affect the Great British Pound. So he's talking once again, just like last week. So that can make a bit of movement in the market. And then on Wednesday we have very, very big news. We have GBP CPI, which is a market mover, but mainly Draghi speaks again, and then we have the US dollar FOMC meeting, which happens once a month on a Wednesday at 7 p.m. So there'll be the FOMC statement and the federal fund rate. So there's a lot of stuff coming out, and then we have some New Zealand dollar news. So there's quite a lot of fundamentals this week, but this is an important one on Wednesday, and we don't want to be stuck on the wrong side of trades around this time as well. So I'm going to be keeping us very, very careful, so we're not leading into this time when there can be a huge spike in the market, that we are always safe at all times. On Thursday, again, more Australian news, Japanese yen news, Great British Pound news, quite a bit coming out once again, the official bank rate, and then Government Carney speaks again, so he's doing a lot of talking this week. And then Friday, Euro news and some Canadian news, core retail sales. So there's quite a lot of fundamentals this week across a range of pairs. So I'll be keeping us aware of that before the news comes out, not just at the time of it coming out, but leading up to it, because we need to see how the market is acting before we actually come up to those sort of news announcements, because we can often see on the charts where the market's going to go before the news comes out. So we want to be ahead of the game and make sure that we're not caught on the wrong side of the market. So as I was saying with the pound, a lot of news coming out with the pound. So we may well see this push down and tap that 1.2500 level. But I will be watching the market around this level here on market open, around this sort of daily trend line and this previous low. So I'll be watching out for that. GBP AUD daily chart, you can see here we're finally slowing down after that 150, 200 pip push up from this support. We've had 1, 2, 3 sort of pushes to the upside, which have failed, and we see these two sort of doji candles. We drop down to the 4 hour. We can just see we're starting to pull back now. So we have had a nice bullish run, which we're coming back down to test that trend line, which I pointed out last week. And from here, we need to see whether the price can actually just sort of bounce off this and push up higher, or whether we're going to come lower. But I am keeping an eye on this. We might have a trade coming up on this next week. Could possibly have a short trade, but I'm going to be watching how price acts sort of around this area. If I just go back to the 4-hour chart, you can see, I'll just get rid of this at the moment. You can see price here. It's just kind of created a high here, created this resistance, and then we've got this sort of support area here that we're currently in, and this sort of support and this support. So what I'm going to be watching price action around this level, the bottom of this range, and this trend line here, and just seeing how we act around here. So we're sort of at the bottom of this range, reaching this trend line, seeing if we're going to be able to push off this, or whether we're actually going to break lower. If we break lower, we may come back for a retest of this as resistance, and then push down lower. But we do look like we could have a bit of a pullback on GBP AUD, given that we've had this big steep uptrend all of last week. You can see here on the daily chart we had 1, 2, 3, 4 bullish days. So we might have a bit of a pullback before going higher, or we may come lower. So I'm keeping a close eye on this for possibly a short trade coming into next week. And if we can have another push higher up to maybe the top of this region, we're going to be patient on this. Then it will give us an opportunity for a better short if we have more rejection. And similar to Euro AUD, as you can see here, Euro AUD was sort of in this little range. So should we push back up to the upside, we may get a better opportunity to take a short. So I'm keeping an eye on both of these trades coming into next week. GBP JPY as well. So you can see here, we've just zoomed out. Daily last week, you can see we were ranging around this sort of area here. We broke out and we had that fast move down to the downside. We're now reaching that former support, which I was showing out last week. So coming into next week, I am keeping a close eye on this sort of area. We've shown some sort of a slowdown here on Friday. We had that shooting star, followed by another one, followed by another one. So I am keeping an eye around this area coming into the start of next week. We had this nice 1 hour bullish engulfing following this shooting star here. So getting some price action showing that price wants to slow down. But obviously we've been quite bearish here from the top here, given that these 3 or 4 rejections, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm keeping an eye on GBP JPY. As most of you know, this can be a quick mover and can move fast. But just because we've had this bearish move down doesn't necessarily mean that we're actually going to push down any lower. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on this level, keep an eye on price action, keeping it nice and simple, not overthinking it, and just seeing if we do get this double bottom here, there may be a nice opportunity to take a long trade from around these levels to push back up higher. But I'm going to keep an eye on it and we'll update. One of the reasons I'm looking for that on GBP JPY is because USD JPY has been struggling to push up for 2 weeks now. So we're looking at a long trade on this 2 weeks ago down here, which many of you are probably still holding. But we tried to push up higher, pull back down, but I've kept on this consolidation zone just to keep giving you the idea, or just keep letting you understand of this sort of consolidation zone that we're in, and just seeing how this is what pairs can do for quite some time when they're just not ready to move. So we've had a big move down, and literally for 2 weeks now we've been within this range from, let's just say, 108.100, and the highest was 108.80. So literally for 2 weeks we've moved around 80 to 100 pips maximum. So I am expecting this to start pushing up higher. You can see here on Friday we had a pullback, like I explained. I wanted to see, had that pullback, had this nice 4 hour bullish engulfing, which is a good sign to take a long, but given this choppiness, many would have stayed away. So I'm just watching how market opens here once again, because if we can get USD JPY, if the US dollar continues its strength and the Japanese yen weakens, we may see this start finally pushing up. If we get a nice breakout of this and the pace starts to pick up with USD JPY, we may see a reversal in GBP JPY as well. So keeping an eye out on this. You may see that trend line I just had on a minute ago, which I'll just keeping my eye on. So we've got the outer trend out here, but then we have the inner trend. Sorry, let me just zoom in here, guys. We have the inner trend here that we're just breaking out of now. You can see we've had this trend line here, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, pushed down, and now we're just breaking out. We came back, retested it as support, and it looks like we now may get that momentum to finally push up and break out to the upside. So if USD JPY can pick up momentum, then that may help GBP JPY to also pick up momentum as well. So also we have this trend line here, so we have this, we have to be aware of this, that we have this resistance just above us. So I want to see USD JPY pick up some momentum and really have a good strong push to the upside to break out of this whole consolidation zone, this whole choppiness. And if we can, as I said, that will give us the momentum of other Japanese yen pairs, and we may see a push up from GBP JPY. So I'll be keeping an eye on that situation. Gold, something that everybody I think was looking at last week. So weekly on the chart here, you can see this doji candle. So we've come up to the top here and we've slowed down, and let me just get this on here. Previous week we failed to break above this trend line, and then last week we've had this doji candle. We pushed up, and yeah, we failed to close above the previous highs. So we've now, price has pushed up, taken out any stop losses above here. You can see how we're struggling now to break out. So on the weekly chart, you can see we are starting to look a little bit weaker here, and the price is slowing down. But I do expect price to sort of play around here a little bit more before pushing down to the downside, if any. So from here on the daily chart, you can see we had a nice short on here a couple of weeks ago, and we pushed down. But this is why it's important to look at the daily chart every day, because this is why I said to take a lot of your profit around this level. Even though we had that nice bearish engulfing candle, you see this pin bar on the daily chart showing that price was rejecting these sort of levels, and we have to remember that we are still bullish on gold. So that's why you have to be careful, because at the moment we're very, very bullish. We've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bullish days, 2 bearish days on a retracement, and then we push back up once again. So we are still bullish. We just made a new high. So I am watching this now coming into next week. I am looking for shorts, but see that 4 hour that ended on Friday, this could well just pull back up into this sort of region. Let's just get this on here. We could come back into this sort of region, which I think we definitely will. And from here, I'll be watching closely to see, do we have the rejection? Is price going to reject this one more time, or are we going to be too strong and push up once again? So I will be watching out for price to come up to around this level here and then push over down to the downside. But if we break through that, we could still keep going up higher. Remember, gold can be affected very heavily by fundamentals. So as I explained last week, it's being used as a safe haven because of things that are going on in the world. So that's what's pushing up the price of gold. But we'll see now next week if we're ready to push to come back down. I'll be watching on market open, but I do think this is a good area to keep an eye on to see where the price can actually come up and reject this. So we see some nice clear rejection. You can also see here we're finding some support on the 1 hour chart previously. So we came down, we had this pin bar. So price can come back up to this sort of region and reject it. Let's see this level here, then we may have a really nice opportunity to take a short trade with more confidence and then ride this one down. So I'll be updating you on that. USD CAD, really nice trade. I'm still bullish on this at the moment, but again, next week we could possibly be looking at new short trades, so I'll update you on that. But last week we came down, we tapped that 1.32500 level that I explained. Let me just move this all out of the way now. Yeah, we came down, tapped that level, had that nice 4 hour bullish engulfing, had that move that we keep seeing time and time again, where we have this range, where we broke out, then we came back, tapped that as support, and used that as a catalyst to kind of, or a trampoline to sort of bounce and push ourselves off. We've seen this a few times now on GBP JPY, GBP AUD, so that's why you always have another opportunity, even if you don't take the long trade down here, pushed up through, and then you always come back the price always has to retrace before moving up higher. So we had that nice retracement here, bounce off this sort of range of this support level, and then Friday evening with the strength of the US dollar, we gained, I don't know, what was it, 170 pips on this or so. So given that the US dollar had that really strong finish to the end of the week, that's why I want to wait on Monday to sort of see how the market opens and how it settles, because that was a big move, and I want to make sure that we can continue that, or whether it was a sort of a fake move. You can see here we could running into former sort of support resistance level. So we can see here we got resistance here, use it as support, broken back through, using it, may use it as resistance now before making a move lower. There's always a possibility. We might pop up higher, hit the 61.8% retracement, but if, now on this trade you should take about 75% of your profit, leave 25% to keep running, as this could go higher and make new highs above here. But I will be keeping an eye on the market next week, early on next week, to see how we carry on with this and whether we're going to keep pushing higher. Now the USD CAD is pushing higher, and I've mentioned this to you before, how this can correlate with the Australian dollar. And if the US CAD is going up, Australian dollar usually goes down. So I was watching this pair last week, and was one of the reasons why I was not quick to jump into Euro AUD, because I could see the weakness on the Australian dollar. I could see the Australian dollar was getting weak. So given that the Australian dollar was getting weak, the Australian dollar gets weak, Euro AUD is going to go up if the Australian dollar is weaker than the Euro. So watching that, I could see that we were going to come down. If I drop down to the 4-hour chart on Australian dollar, US dollar, we broke this sort of counter trend line, and from there we were just in pre-fall. We were just bearish here, having a few mini moves up to the upside when we found this support, which I was watching for, but there was no real conviction that we were going to make a move up higher. You could see these wicks to the upside. We just kept rolling over to the downside, and again, obviously the US dollar had a big part to play in this falling down. But I am watching this pair coming into next week. We're sort of hitting this daily trend line as well, hitting this weekly support of 0.6875. So we are hitting an important level of support. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on this and seeing how we react to this form of support that we had here, whether we can break lower, or we are actually going to start finding ourselves slow down and then starting to see a push back up. If we can see a nice push back up from here, for the Australian dollar, this will help my short bias on Euro AUD to come down even lower. But what we might see is the Australian dollar push down a little bit lower first on market open, and then from here we might start to push up higher, which will confluence with Euro AUD perhaps moving up higher one more time before the move lower. So all of these things you have to keep in mind and see what happens on market open and what happens next week. Same with New Zealand dollar, big push down on Friday due to the US dollar strength. Watching around this level here on the New Zealand dollar. Let me just go back to, I think it was Wednesday was the busy day. Yeah, we have GDP news for New Zealand dollar on Wednesday, so that's something to look out for the New Zealand dollar. So I'll be keeping an eye on this. That weekly chart, very bearish. Daily, very bearish. So it looks like we could break lower. I am going to be watching price now that we've just broken below the weekly the weekly support of 0.6500. Whether we actually come back, use this as resistance, find resistance here and then push lower, or whether we're going to find some support around these previous regions that we found before, or sort of in this sort of region here. So I'm keeping an eye on this. Very interesting just to see how the US dollar reacts as we open after a big finish on Friday. So I'm going to see if we can continue that or not. As I said, there are other pairs that I am looking at. These are the main pairs at the moment where I see most movement, but other pairs I will update once I see it. But at the moment, that's mainly it for next week. I will be seeing how the market opens in about an hour, and then we'll see, let it settle, see what happens on Monday. But remember, we have a lot of fundamentals this week, so I expect some big movement in the market. But it's all about, as you're going to see now with me, and with trading with me on a daily basis, fundamental news isn't always about the actual release of the news. The market sort of knows what's going to happen before we do. The big players in the market, they know what the news is going to be, or they have a better insight. So we're always feeding off the leftovers, really, of the bigger moves in the market. But the price action tells us everything. So by looking at price action, being able to read it, we can see what's going to happen before, and it gives us a good guess on what's going to happen with the news on the releases. So we're on the right side of it and not the wrong side, because there's often a lot of manipulation before the fundamentals are released, before and after. So as I said, as time goes on, as the weeks go on, and I explain this more and more and more, you're going to start to understand. For instance, last Sunday when I was explaining about the non-farm payroll being manipulative, and that was the reason that we had that breakthrough this trend line on Euro USD. Many people probably didn't really understand that at the time, but as you can see now, we had that big bullish candle to try and break through, which on the 4 hour, when we had a big bullish candle like this on the 4 hour after breaking through the trend line, a lot of people would have taken a trade, like taking a long there, expecting this to keep going up higher. But the complete opposite happened. So it's knowing these things, which I'm going to train your mind, train you to see them, and once you start seeing it time and time and time again, you just start seeing it automatically and being able to pick up on it and start placing your own trades, or making your own market bias. So yeah, I'll explain all to you next week as and when I see things. But at the moment, that's it for tonight. Hope you all have a great evening, and I will catch up with you if there's any big moves of market open. I'll update the group and keep us all up to date. But otherwise, I'll be back with the morning call tomorrow morning. Good night.